Albertsons owns Safeway and Hagen. Kroger owns QFC and Fred Meyer. So just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about here, these two companies alone and all of their brands currently have more than 700,000 employees in nearly 5,000 stores across 49 states. Kroger alone has more than 21,000 workers right here in Washington state. They have a combined annual revenue of more than $200 billion. Importantly, more than half of all supermarkets in Washington state are currently owned by either Kroger or Albertsons. They account for more than 50% of all supermarket sales in our state. They also, naturally, directly compete with each other in communities all across our state. That's the nature of competition. Albertsons, for example, has lowered its prices in many Washington communities to compete with Fred Meyer and QFC and highlights in its advertisements products where it offers a better deal. This merger is bad for Washington consumers. If Kroger and Albertsons merge, they will, simply put, dwarf the competition. Shoppers will have fewer choices and less competition, and that results in higher prices. Put another way, nobody buys their cheap competitor to lower prices. Now, in late 2022, Kroger and Albertsons announced their plan to merge. Even company executives have expressed that this merger might be illegal. As part of the discovery process during our investigation, we reviewed hundreds of thousands of records. We uncovered internal chats between corporate executives and other employees. After rumors of the proposed merger surfaced, a vice president of marketing with Albertsons wrote, and I'm quoting, "You are basically creating a monopoly in grocery with the merger. It makes no sense." Quote, "It'd be like AT&T and Verizon merging," he added. We agree. This makes no sense. This is especially true in Washington, which, if this merger would be allowed to go through, Washington would be one of the most impacted states in the entire country. The proposed merger will eliminate head-to-head competition between the two largest grocery operators in our state. To make matters worse, if the merger is allowed to go forward, the next closest competitor to this newly merged company would be a wholesale distribution company that has never operated a store in Washington state before. In order to fix the competitive problems of this merger, Kroger and Albertsons have offered to sell off 413 stores nationwide, including 104 in Washington. Gives you a sense of the scale of the impact on Washington. Their proposed buyer, however, is a company called C&S Wholesale Grocers, which is primarily a wholesale distributor. C&S currently only operates 23 supermarkets nationwide. That means C&S would go from operating 23 supermarkets to nearly 450 around the country. In Washington, that means they'd go from literally 0 to 104 stores, becoming the second largest supermarket operator in the state virtually overnight. The newly combined Kroger-Albertsons brands will be immediately positioned to outcompete their former supermarkets while they transition to a new owner. At the same time, C&S will still be trying to adjust to becoming a large-scale nationwide supermarket operator. If those stores fail, hundreds of Washingtonians could lose their jobs. We've seen a situation very similar to this play out before. The current proposed divestiture plan bears a striking resemblance to Albertsons' failed divestiture of Washington-based stores to a similarly unqualified buyer, Hagen, less than a decade ago. So taking you back in time about a decade, as a part of Albertsons' 2015 merger with Safeway, 146 Albertsons and Safeway stores, including 26 in Washington state, were sold to Hagen. At the time, Hagen was a regional supermarket chain with only 18 stores that lacked the infrastructure to rapidly expand to a multi-state national grocery retailer. Not surprisingly, it struggled to operate the divested stores, and less than a year later, Hagen was forced to file for bankruptcy. Albertsons was able to reacquire more than 50 of its divested stores, including 14 Washington locations, in some cases paying $1 per store at auction. It now owns and operates Hagen stores in Washington state. If C&S fails, bring us back to our current situation, If C&S fails, it is also possible Kroger could be allowed to reacquire its divested supermarkets, just like Albertsons did after Hagen's failure. As the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And even if C&S were able to break the trend and succeed where Hagen failed, there are still many communities throughout Washington state where Kroger has not offered to sell stores and where it will still enjoy substantially lessened competition or a near monopoly as a result of this merger. Just last week, Kroger and Albertsons said publicly that this merger, quote, will expand competition, lower prices, protect union jobs, and enhance customers' shopping experience. But that's not what they're saying behind closed doors. After the merger was announced, an Albertsons executive wrote, quote, it's all about pricing and competition, and we all know, prices will not go down. Listen to what their own executives are saying. This makes no sense. Prices will not go down. There are clear warning signs alerting us to potentially disastrous consequences for Washingtonians if this proposed merger succeeds. Grocery prices are already too high. These companies are merging so they can increase profits, not help Washingtonians with their grocery bills. I also want to add how much we appreciate, my team and I were talking about this before we came out here, we received many complaints from consumers, from Washingtonians across the state who wrote to my team expressing their concerns about this. And what I want to communicate to those folks is thank you for writing, and that those voices are a part of our complaint, that literally the voices of those consumers, those Washingtonians writing to our office, form part of our complaint that we're communicating to the judge here in King County. Free enterprise is built on companies competing, and that competition benefits everyone. Without sufficient competition, shoppers face fewer choices, and they face higher prices. Would-be competitors face a rigged system without any opportunities to compete. Our job is to make sure there's a level playing field for Washington consumers, and that means pushing back against the consolidation of power that destroys free enterprise and harms Washingtonians. And we're prepared to do all we can do to avoid that outcome. We'll be seeking to block this merger nationwide. We have filed our complaint in King County Superior Court today.